Hello, friends. I'm your host Shashi with you all on Women Dialogues to create more voice for women and by women. And today's our guest is connecting from UK, Austra. She's helping in self master. She's helping people in improving their self control, get in charge in their emotion, and get more done without procrastination of or feeling overwhelmed. And I think these all emotions we all have at some point of time in our life. But how we can deal with these emotions? I think for that we have right person here in front of you who can guide us, who can teach us, who can mentor us, and who can coach us. How we can do all these things and how we can become successful. So let's join our hands together and welcome our today's speaker, Ustra from Liverpool, UK. So welcome, Austra, on the Women Dialogue Talk Show.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Austra, for accepting and for becoming part of this journey or this talk show program. So, Austra, as I was saying, your work is in current time. It's very important. The work you do, you
Yeah.
work and you coach, you mentor the human. You work with human psychology. You help people to navigate their paths or their journey in their life where they are finding maybe stuck or they are finding hurdles or struggle. So let's start talking about your own journey when you grew up, how you grew up, where you grew up, and what kind of learning you learned from your childhood. So please share with us.
I grew up. Yeah, sure. So I grew up. I'm originally from Latvia. From Riga, Latvia, and I, when I was growing up, I think I always was really into understanding myself and why I am certain way or why I do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when I was 14, I think that's when I realized that I had low self-esteem, that I would feel like really insecure, really anxious, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have anybody to go to. Like I didn't feel like I have anybody to go to ask questions or get some help. So then what I did naturally, I just turned to books and I started reading. I started to look for the answers. And that helped me to understand myself better and also understand other people better. And then I started writing some. I remember the first time when I started to do like some self work in a written format was like I think 2012. I remember I have like one notebook that I found like years ago, um where I started to write like answer certain questions about myself and things like that. And that's when I pretty much started my like psychology discoveries and understanding myself, also helping people as well, because as I was working on myself I was helping others as well. And Then I moved into I knew I wanted to study psychology. Um, but my dad wasn't sure about it and he wanted me to move more towards like business and things like that. And I knew that I wasn't I wasn't thinking that I will do psychology as like that's the only thing. I was always really interested in maybe doing my own business and stuff like that as well, but my main interest always been psychology. But that and then when my dad looked into more into psychology and the studies that I wanted to do, he was okay with it and he was like, well, actually go ahead, it sounds actually really good, which I'm really thankful for, because in my family our parents are really supportive of us choosing our own like education or what we want to study. So like building our own career instead of trying to, well, you can feel that they want you to do maybe some certain things, but I still respect your decision. So that in that way, like I'm really thankful for that. Um, and then when I was studying first in Latvia, I did 1 year of psychology, and then within that year, I was like, I'm not sure this is exactly what I want, because most of the things that I was learning, I already knew from my own studies that I have done on myself. And also, when we had the open day in the university, I heard about sports psychology, and I was like, that's interesting, because I have always been into sports since I was a kid. I was into swimming. Then I did like 10 years basketball. I also did a few months of javelin. So like I have always seen myself in sports. And I remember even when I was up for psychology degree, I was like, I'm not sure when I will be able to train, do like physical activities. Then when I heard about sports psychology, I was like, wow, that sounds like exactly like something that I would want to do.
Right.
Um, but the problem was that there were no degrees in Latvia. So you can't get sports psychology degree in Latvia. So I found somebody who was helping to sign up for universities. And I thought there's only masters. So I was like, okay, I will finish bachelor's here. And I also was tutoring kids on the side as well. I have a tutor while I was studying first year in Latvia. And
Mhm.
then she was like, well, actually, there are bachelors in sports psychology, and UK is really good in like psychology field. And I was like, okay. I looked into it, and then I applied to unis, and I ended up coming here, which for me felt it was really interesting experience because first I was flying for the first time. I have never been in
Mhm.
a plane before,
Oh,
so it was my
wonderful.
first experience
It
flying.
was how was that? It
um,
was goosebumps, lot of butterfly, or a lot of anxiousness, or a lot of
well,
excitement.
no, actually, that's the thing. Because I was I was waiting for a moment where I will feel like, okay,
Hmm.
what do I do now? Where I get like stressed or anxious. But
Mhm.
like when it comes to airport, I had one friend who sent me audio messages on WhatsApp. Okay, now you're gonna have to do this, and I'm like, okay. I listen, do that, now listen to next message. Oh, then you're gonna do this. Okay, and then I just went over the airport just listening to her messages. Um, but then, like, even on the airplane, I was like, so when is the moment when I actually feel really stressed? Because I'm leaving the country and English is not my native language. My native language is Latvian. I knew English pretty well, but it wasn't like at the. I still was like anxious about the accent and things like that. And
Right.
I was flying to Liverpool, and in Liverpool, they have really specific accent. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
understand if they were asking me if I need a bag in the store. I just couldn't understand the accent. Um, but like I think because I have done so much work on myself and I had like a lot of self-awareness, that's why I didn't have this moment of maybe like even panic, because there were many reasons. I was flying for the first time, I was living alone for the first time, and I had to find ways how to like provide myself and how to. And another thing was that when I applied for uni, most students they get these like student loans for their living expenses. I didn't get it. I had to provide myself fully, so I didn't even get that. um but there were like a lot of times when it was like really stressful, like so many times that it was mainly about like money issues because I had to work on the side of uni, and I was studying full-time uni. And I was trying to also do something on the side, keep reading, keep developing myself, learning new skills. So that time was really challenging mentally. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm able to help people maybe at a bit different level, because I have gone through a lot of like hardships up to
Mm-hmm.
now, and I know there'll be a lot more moving ahead. Um, but the thing is that when you go through hardships, you learn so many things about yourself, and that's usually what I tell people is that these hardships, they first they probably will not be there forever, but also without them, even looking back of all the like challenges that I have had, I wouldn't want to not to have them. I wouldn't want to be a student that got student loan that I didn't even have worry as much about finding a job or things like that, because then it would have been easy. And like many students, they say, "Oh my gosh, university is hard," and I'm like, "Well, university was the easiest part for me," and I got first as well. Like it wasn't like I was getting bad marks. I was like I got first in my uni as well, in
Mm-hmm.
like bachelor's in sports psychology. So like, and it was science degree, and I'm the person who doesn't have English as the first language.
Right.
So like that's when people or give me excuses. I give them many reasons why if I can do it, you can do it. I didn't have funding, so I had to work for myself to provide myself, which it's not enough that you spend time working. You also have to add up all the stress you have about money and all the time you are just worried about it, which is like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I was training on the side as well. And while I was doing uni, I was also studying and reading books on the side. I was doing different courses on, let's say, digital marketing and things like that. And I was trying to look for small jobs to do on the side as well, apart from the main jobs that I had. So like when somebody says me that the university is hard or they have reasons why it's hard, I usually give them 5 reasons why I could say that it was hard for me. But for me, university was the easiest part. Out of
Mm-hmm.
all the experience that I have had here,
Right.
I'm like, well, university was the easiest part.
So, Austra, this sounds a lot of motivation, a lot of inspiring for our audience by hearing from your life journey, as you mentioned. Like uh, you hear many times from others, university is hard, but whereas you find, no, I can manage this hard part, but managing maybe other things is hard for me. But not even I'm accepting as a hard, I'm still able to manage it, and I'm still pursuing my passion. So what I can hear, like how much dedication one can have for pursuing their passion from very early till now. And today, now you coach, you mentor, and you teach other people. So when we are talking about your mentorship, your work, uh, what kind of experience you feel when people are mostly having? What kind of things they have, or maybe in general or in current scenario? What kind of difference you found in the people?
Um, I would say the main things in what I'm helping people with, because as much as I want to help with everything, I'm not expert in everything. So like the main things that I help people with is mainly self-control. And that's not just, it's like you learn to control yourself, but you also learn to control your emotions, your
Hmm.
actions. So with actions, many times it's that people feel like they can't build healthy habits, they can't be consistent, or they feel overwhelmed. So I help
Hmm.
them with that. And with emotions, it's a lot of times not being able to control or feel like emotions are being stronger than they are. And then with also, I help a lot with communication, which is, well, ironically, communication needs a lot of self control. So that's what I tell people is that if uh, if somebody is working on their emotions or they get angry easily and things like that, I'm telling them it's enough to have one person to have good communication, because now that we are speaking, we're not arguing. But then you go with somebody else and you argue with them. So it's sometimes it starts with at least one person in the communication that is able to control themselves, because then the other person also is adjusting. So if somebody is shouting at somebody and the other person that doesn't respond back, like there's no way that argument is going to like, develop the way it would if somebody else is like arguing back. So like I would say the main things that I help with at this point is when it comes to self-control and then communication as well.
Yeah, that's so important. And when we are talking about the one you are mentioning about self control and the communication, did you find any in cases or in your work while working with humans, or you impacted by your work, you found changes in greatly in their lifestyle or in them?
Huge. I had one client that I was working with, and before we started working, um, she would every day after work she would watch TV, and then few months of us working, she was like, "I don't even know where the remote is." Like, and what's more important, one thing is that the person is changing, and she changed a lot of her habits and her mindset. She's completely in different place, and she's also now coaching other people. So she's moving away from her 9 to 5 job into building her career as a coach. Um, and like the best thing about it was that it wasn't just her that was changing. it was also people around her. So her daughter was starting to change. And she said that we are not watching TV anymore. And I see that she's actually becoming more creative. She's thinking more. She's asking more interesting questions. And she's being like curious. She's being more like playful and things like that. So I think the most rewarding thing is not only that but pretty much their change affects people around them as well without them trying to affect them. I think that's where that impact is spreading, where it's not just me working with one person. Actually, that person now goes and impacts somebody else without them knowing it, and then those people go impact somebody else. So I think that's something that has been really rewarding for me, to see how people actually are willing to take action to change themselves, and then they even go out and help somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's interesting the way you shared. Not only by your work, you impacted your client, but it's a chain reaction. And you shared how
Yeah.
your client shared with you the chain reaction, having founding their own her own purpose and seeing her daughter, which is coming young generation, and developing those good
Yeah.
habits. So this is really rewarding. I feel it's give you a lot of feeling of great rewarding sense. So Ustra, when we are talking about it, you mentioned about your childhood. You mentioned about that you was having your own behavior, but you worked by understanding those behavior. Uh, what do you find in current young generation, as you if you relate your own that age when you was thinking, okay, why I'm having this, and trying to read more, to write more, and to get those answers, and whereas in current generation, where do you see if there is any gap, or they are more advanced, or what way, if they are lacking something, how they can build that?
Is there like difference between me and the younger generation?
Yes, I
I
just
think
would
it's
like to
hard to say.
not in general, particularly you, but I'm talking in general, particularly in your era, in your time, whereas you were having thinking of understanding yourself, why I'm having certain question or certain behavior, and now since we
Okay.
know a lot of media, social media, a lot of things are in. So how you find the difference, and how you see uh, if they are doing better, or if they are not, what way they can do.
I think one of the biggest challenges, um, I don't think if it's better or worse, but like I know that one of the biggest challenges is instant gratification. So it
Hmm.
might be the patience, where um,
Hmm.
people from younger generation, even myself included, like I wasn't, I didn't grow up with like social media. I even got my phone only when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old or something like that. And that was only when I was going on like basketball camp, just to be able to call my parents when I get back. But it wasn't that I grew up with social media. So I think one challenge might be that a lot of times people that grow up in environment where whatever you want, you can get it now. So it's like if you want to
Hmm.
watch a movie, you don't have to go to cinema and check times.
Right.
You just watch
Hmm.
it now. If you want to
Right.
get a delivery, you can get it literally today.
So
But
true.
it's not the same when it comes to self-development. Like you
Hmm.
can't change overnight. And
Right.
that's something you see in movies, that somebody changes overnight. Somehow, miraculously, they change overnight. Um, but in reality, it's really rare that you get change overnight. It might be only, let's say, when something really dramatic happens to you, when you just have
Right.
this like realization. But
Yeah.
most of the time, the way change happens is by tiny things you do day by day, and you start to build up, and then you get to that place when you're a different person. So
Right.
it's that board, like it's the same as like nobody will show you a movie with an athlete training every day for hours until they get to championship. You just don't see those movies. But that's the way the change happens, that's the way the
Right.
self-development happens. So I think that might be the biggest challenge, is the patience part, where they
Hmm.
have to understand that it takes time to get to where you want to get. um
Hmm.
and it's all about the process, because it doesn't matter, let's say, when it comes to your income. It doesn't mean that when
Hmm.
you have money you will be happy all of a sudden. You have to do the work on yourself. so that you're happy with where you are right now, with yourself, with where you are right now, and still strive to get better each day and get towards that success that you want to achieve. But don't wait for that success to come and only then feel good about yourself, because
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you really picked very right point, and very timingly, because we can feel that, we can see that in people, especially our younger generation. They get really very fast, lose their patience, lose their practice, feel like not really getting what they are looking for. So that's all, I think, as you compile in instant gratification. So correct, because they feel like, oh, my friend on Instagram on having that much follower, I'm not having. And they feel like, and I was reading recently, uh, it was really very sad, and it was really heartbreaking that small kids, they get affected by these social media, and they reach on the conclusion to take such hard decision to end their life just by getting
Oh
impacted
yeah,
by these
there's
things.
so many things like about like self-worth and self and well-being. Like I had literally the last episode that I came out literally 40 minutes ago on my own podcast. It was somebody who's expert in this, and she was talking about well-being and how social media is affecting it. And she said that her name is Maya Gutka, and she said that with social media, it is actually scientifically proven that if you have no social media, it's
Mm,
actually not as good to your well-being as if you have some social media.
mm,
So social media is still playing in positive role as long as you don't get consumed by it. Um,
right.
and I think that's where a lot of times the parents have to come in and
Yeah,
teach those
exactly.
children what actually means, like that social media is not the main thing. It's not
Mm,
your life. Your life is actually the life you live right here, right now, in the reality. And you
mm-hmm.
don't have to show up like perfect. And that's something that I also felt like, oh my gosh, even like when I was starting my podcast, I was like, oh, I have to have like intro music, I have to have perfect background, I have to have like everything perfect. But then I was like, well, I have to start with what I have and just learn from there and just grow along the way, because like life is not perfect, and you can, even if you try to get to that level of being perfect, you get there by not being perfect and learning and just adjusting each time. So like that's another thing that I have seen with many people is just like perfectionism, that you want everything to be perfect and then you start to overthink, and then like you want to have everything prepared before you take any steps. And I have had it myself years ago. But one thing that I have learned was that when you start to take action, there actually are some mistakes you can't predict. Something happens, something will come up. You can't even predict it no matter how good you prepare. You just can't predict. But then the main thing is that instead of focusing on being afraid of making mistakes, you focus on being in mindset where you can deal with you can find solutions to any problem. So like, okay, whatever happens, I'll find a solution. I know that mistakes will happen. I'm not trying even to hide away from them. I know they will be happening. It's life. But as many mistakes I can make along the way, I'll make sure I learn from them and actually don't repeat them. Or I make sure I have done everything I can think of to
Right.
avoid that mistake in the future. And then just go from there.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think we all need to do that by learning that the way you explained, rather than avoiding or accepting your mistakes, uh, and keep repeating same things. Uh, it's better to
And
accept.
also
Yeah.
another thing is the what ifs. So like we
Mhm.
all have these what ifs.
Yeah.
What if I do this and this happens? What if that happens? And
Uh,
what happens with what ifs is that you don't know if they are true unless you
right.
take action.
Mm.
So if you say, oh, what if this happens? Okay, let's see. Now go take action and see if it happens.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't know if it happens unless you actually take action. So you
Right.
can even play it as a game that, okay, write down all your what ifs, then go and take action, come back, and you can see how many actually happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we just
I,
create so many stories in our heads that get in our way to taking action.
yeah, it's a beautiful analogy, as you said. What if we put it all in our head, from what if, from our head to reality, and to just understand and
Yeah.
experience, rather than keep boggling and keep having those same thoughts in our mind, and keep controlling our behavior, or maybe our progress, our growth, as you mentioned. Because many times we say, okay, I want to do this, but what if I drop this and do that, and we never explore
Yeah.
those areas. Maybe if you are good in something, as you said, uh, as like you mentioned, you took that challenge, that okay, I want to do this, and you came here. What if you would have not joined here, be having fear? Oh, I don't have that accent, I don't have that English. But finding
Yeah.
it, yeah, exactly. That's life, and that way we learn and grow. So I again
Yeah, and also with
I
the what ifs, what another thing with what ifs is that most of them, they once you take that action and you actually experience that experience, all the self-doubt, it goes away.
hmm,
It just goes away because you're now in this moment, you experience the situation, and you're
right.
like, oh my gosh, I thought I would be so stressed. Even when I was flying here, I thought
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I'm coming to a new country. I don't
Right.
know anybody. I knew
Mhm.
nobody. I
Mhm.
had like no family here, no friends,
Right.
nobody. And I had
Right.
no idea how I will find a job. Even like when I came here, it was like, okay, I will find a job because I think I had like 1 month, 2 months, I think 1.5 month until the uni started. And I was like, okay, I'll find a job. But I couldn't open bank account
Mhm.
until I started uni and I got the paper from uni. I went to uni and I'm like, can you give me a paper that I need? You know, I will be starting here so that I can start to find a job and get like I needed to get bank accounts to get a job. And they were like, oh no, we can't do it and start uni. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was literally just living 1.5 months just spending money. And I was saving that money for like, I don't know, I was working as a tutor for 8 months back in Latvia. And
Yeah.
that's when I just pretty much spent all that money. Um, so like there are many things that you learn as you go, but at the same time, when you go through those hardships,
Mhm.
what happens is that when you have it next time, you're not that stressed because you know, well, I have had it once before, so and I survived and I'm pretty okay.
Mhm.
I can go through it again. And then the more they
Right.
happen, the less even surprised you are. You're like, oh, okay, another thing to overcome. Let's go.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. I think that's very strong point in learning, dealing with our own fear of having these what ifs, as you shared with very real
Yeah.
and very day-to-day life example, having those struggles as a student, as a even in a family, or in all phase of life. But when we go through, maybe it makes us more strong, it makes us more ready for, and make us more calm to deal better or take better decisions. So, Ustra, there are so many learnings, so much, your life experiences are teaching us and inspiring and motivating us. Uh, One thing I would like to ask, how you define as your leadership style?
Can you ask it again?
How you define your leadership style as a, as a female? How you define your leadership style?
Um, I think the only way that leadership works is if you lead by example. And I have felt it myself where let's say if I have periods when I'm teaching something to somebody and I'm not at that moment living it, I feel like I am lying to that person, that I'm not being authentic. Um, and that's just coming from me. Like I'm really honest person. I don't like to like pretend or lie and things like that. So for me, when I communicate it, I can always feel like something is not right. So I think the best way to lead is only by example, because then people, one thing is that you go and tell people what to do, but me around. So even like when you boss people around, they are not willing they probably will not be loyal, um, because they don't feel respected, because they just feel like you are bossing them around and you don't really care for, let's say, for your own business, because you just want them to do all the work. So I think you're a
Mhm.
leader. You have to be willing to work and do any position, so that if somebody is missing or somebody doesn't show up, you're able to do that job. Like, no job is too good for you. Picking up some paper that is on the floor, you're not too good to do that job. Like, it's your job. Like, you're the leader, you're responsible for like everything. So I think taking that responsibility, that it's not about whether it's your job or not, because you're a leader. Everything is your job, it's your company.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think that's very beautiful way to say to have leadership qualities, to put yourself into all shoes and do that and be example rather than and create example rather than commanding or just finding other ways to get it done. Get create those
Yeah. And
set
usually one
styles.
thing that I tell people, like one thing that I tell people is that, now imagine if you had a boss that would be bossing you around. How would you feel? Because I think many leaders, they find it hard to, or they have never actually imagined themselves in like shoes of their employees, that they're like, well, but I'm doing this and that. And I'm like, okay, so what if you had a leader or boss who is doing that same thing? How would you feel? Oh, I wouldn't
Hmm.
like it. So why do you think your employees like it? What do you think it's
Yeah,
working on them? Maybe it's
yeah.
not. You just think it is.
Yeah, and when we are talking about our leadership style, and especially when you are sharing your way of leadership style, how you find having a talk show, a platform like this, Women Dialogue, is important and needed.
I think it is. It has been really helpful for me to look at like different shows, different conversations, different podcasts. Like, that's one way how I have been developing myself as well. Just listening to people that are ahead of me, that I might not get access to them, but I can get access to their conversations, to some of the podcasts they have been on, some shows that they have been on. So for me, it has been. I know it works for me because, like, let's say when you're starting off, you can't really afford to get somebody who is like really like 5 steps ahead of you or like 20 years ahead of you. Like, you can't even get the hold of them. But then when you're able to listen to them and get a piece of their mindset, that's when you can learn to um adapt that and use in your own life. So I believe that's something that's really, and it's available to pretty much anybody. You just need to have internet. So I think it's really important, especially when you start off, pretty much at any time, because self development never ends, and you can always learn something from somebody. The moment you stop learning, or like one thing that I have always thought is, I have had some people that were telling me that they can see that I'm expert at what I'm doing, and I'm like, well, I don't see myself as an expert, because the moment you think you are an expert, you stop growing, you stop learning, because you think you know it all. And
Mhm.
like for me, I think the learning process, it will never end. There's always something to work on. There's always something to learn. So as long as you keep open mind and you listen, and another thing is that when you listen to those people, actually listen to them and pay attention to things they say, because they might know something that you don't know. They might have been in experiences that you haven't been, so they can give you information that can prepare you and actually even help you to avoid getting in similar situations. So you can actually learn to avoid some certain mistakes by listening to somebody who has made a mistake.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful share and having such kind of feeling for women dialogues. Thank you for having such kind of understanding, faith for such platforms. And I believe, as you said, that's so true and that's so correct. As we all are here to grow, to develop, and we want to grow together. We want to learn together, and we want that. Yes, we all want to get benefit, and whoever wants to grow and they have that kind of mindset, and that is the reason we are putting together all those talk shows, Those are available on all our on social media platforms to get benefit out of those talk shows by hearing our experience and our speakers. Those are coming, bringing their lot of experiences from their life, from their culture, from their country, from their work, and all together. It's so rich. Having
Yeah.
you are bringing all together your childhood experiences till now. And I think as a student, they can hear if there's somebody wants to see how a student can understand and develop that mindset. It's so important. And thank you once again. Thank you, Austra, for having such faith and giving your time and being with us on this show today. So thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom and this beautiful psychology.
Problem.
We love that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all our viewers and audience who are listening and watching us. As you know, we are always trying to inspire and motivate. We are always here to learn and grow together. And it's the same way today's our speaker, Austra, speaks by her heart, by her experience and by her life journey, what it means to be developing her own passion, where she learned and she took all the way her journey from Slovenia to UK by having even a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiousness. But today she is very successful. She's coaching many other people. So these are the real life example. You are here, hear, you can hear and feel and experience. So join us on this, and same time, don't forget to share, subscribe, and like, and say. And if you would like to connect with our speakers, I'm putting their details in the description as well. See you next time with the new speaker in the same way, bringing more positivity and motivation for you. Till then, take care. Bye bye.